Hey everybody, Mike here again with Hackanuga, and in today's video, I am doing video 3 in my series on becoming a Kubestronaut in 30 days. And this video today is specifically focused on the CKS exam. And if you're not familiar with that, is the Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist. So I actually found the CKS exam to be very similar in difficulty to the CKA. I actually thought personally that the CKA exam was the hardest of the three. Now, granted, I say that I do have a background in security and I work with containers on a daily basis. I am aware of security best practices and hardening containers and things like that. I've worked with tools like Slim Toolkit to harden container images. I've worked with tools like Trivy to scan for vulnerabilities and do things like that. So I already had experience with some of these. I understand HTTPS and certificates very well. That's something that's huge in Kubernetes. You're gonna have to understand that. Whether it's the CKA or the CKS, you're really going to need a strong background in TLS certificates and how to actually create, manage, inspect those. Obviously, all of the authorization and authentication and things happen in Kubernetes happens via certificates. Um, so super important. I just wanted to go over a couple scenarios, and I would strongly suggest that if you're planning to take the CKS, you would also go back and go over some of the CKA scenarios as well. These are going to be very beneficial because in my experience, there was a lot of crossover between these. So specifically looking at the CKS and what do I think is important for you to know? Absolutely, again, them is very crucial. Having at least a basic understanding, knowing how to navigate around, how to, cut blocks of text, how to indent blocks of text, understanding how to troubleshoot the API server. This is a big one on the CKS and the CKA. I can almost guarantee you that you're gonna have a question that's gonna have you're gonna have one or more questions that's gonna have to do with configuring the API server. And remember that all of these exams are taking place in lab environments. They're all set up using kubeadm. And because of that, they are all using static pods. So if you don't understand how to work with static pods, I would definitely go back and brush up on that and really understand essentially what you're going to have. I actually have one of these um, scenarios here pulled up, and I'll just go ahead and demonstrate. Let me blow this up a little bit, and I'll just demonstrate what I mean by static pods. So if you go into the Etsy Kubernetes manifest directory, you'll see we have Kube API server, Kube controller manager, and Kube scheduler, as well as etcd. So this is actually how all of these things are running, right? So if I say psaux grep API server, for example, we'll see that this is the Kube API server process that's running. It's actually running as a static pod, right? And we'll see all the flags here that is being passed to it. So if I open up the manifest file for it, you will see that this is where all of the configuration is happening, right? This is where this container is, everything's taking place. So you're going to really need to be comfortable with going in here and editing these files, and doing things like, maybe you're implementing a configuration or you're implementing a plugin or something like that. Remembering that you're going to also have to update the like volume mounts and volumes, because maybe it's asking you to mount something from like Etsy Kubernetes slash um, I don't know, Etsy slash Kubernetes slash my cool plugin, right? So you're gonna have to make sure that you have a volume here that is mounting that from the local machine into the container, or creating that volume, and then and then also having the volume out so it's in the correct path. So things like that you definitely want to be aware of. That's not necessarily CKS specific, but that is a skill that you're gonna have to have. And another tip that I would have is like an easy way to go in and check for these changes is to, when you make a change, just go ahead and do a daemon reload and do a system control or a system CTL restart on the kubelet. And this is going to be the fastest way to ensure that the static pods are going to be recreated. So now if I say kget pod, this should be broken. It's connection refused, right? So if I run my ps aux grep API server again, let me clear this out. So we can see here that if we go through this file and we look, let's say grep 64. So we can see that the secure port is wrong, right? So we got those changes kind of right away, happened right away. That being said, you're going to have to either know how to use Docker or cryctl, right? In this case, we don't have any containers running via Docker, but they are all running via cryctl. So you're going to have to know how to use that to find your containers and get logs. So for instance, in this one, I can see that it is running and I can say cryctl logs kube API server dash control plane. And oops. I would have to get the container ID here. I believe it's actually no, I think it is control plane. This is a good example of, do you know how to get the container ID from these things? Oops, hit the wrong button there. And you're going to want to have to know how to restart that. So if I do a cryctl ps, you'll see that we have the containers here, and should be, oops, sorry, hit that button again. Muscle memory, hitting the control shift key. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so you can see here that everything is in fact up and running. So we don't have any errors there. You would have, in this scenario, you would have to know how to go in and, kind of manually do some checks and understand why exactly this is breaking. So you should be very familiar with this file and with the options and how everything is set up. Secure port is something that you would probably see on the CKS. So I would definitely be aware of that. And then again, I'll do systemctl daemon reload, and I'll do systemctl restart the kubelet. And if I do that, I can guarantee now that that will restart everything. So that's the quickest way, in my opinion, to restart the static pods. Is just to restart the kubelet, and it's going to recreate those for you. So it should save you a lot of time. In this scenario, they're asking about kubebench. So if we just run kubebench, it's going to take a really long time to do that, especially the first time. So let's grep for 1.2.15. And we're going to say before that entry, we're going to get 10 lines. And after that entry, we want to get 10 lines. So this is another skill that I think is really important, being familiar with the grep tool and how do you like zone in on that information that you're trying to get. So for example, getting the before and after. So if I look here, this is going to give me all of the results, and it's going to show me that this check failed, and it's saying ensure that the profiling argument is set to false. So what exactly is this replying to? We can see that this is regarding the Kube API server. And so we see here exactly what we need to do. Sorry about that. One day I'll learn. So all we need to do for this one is we're gonna go into here and set profiling to false. So I can just go down, I can add a new line, Okay, and again, I'm gonna do a daemon reload. And you might find that it's good to create like an alias or something for this because you might be doing this quite a bit. All right, and then I'm gonna go Kubebench again. And you always want to verify your changes, right, before you move on to the next question. Obviously, in the practice here in Killer Coda, you're going to be able to check it and get some immediate feedback, but on the test, you're not going to get that. So I didn't get anything coming up, which is interesting. And if I check it, everything is correct. So we see they give us an actual command of kubebench run -- targets master. And you can also just check just this one. Oh, sorry, this is a different one. So we're going to say sudo kubebench run -- check 1.3.2. So this is a quick way to just get whether this thing is passing or failing. And this is failing. It's saying ensure that this has status of pass. And so again, this is with the profiling, but this actually gives us the remediation. And this specific one is actually related to the Kube Controller Manager. So this is going to be the same thing. We're just going to go into the Kube Controller Manager manifest, and set profiling to false. And we'll do the daemon reload and do the restart of the kubelet. And then we'll go ahead and run this check again, and we see everything passes. And if we check, there we go. And so now we have one more scenario here, and this is just going to be the same thing, right? We're just going to do if you know the check that you're looking for, you're going to put it here. You can use this -- check flag. It's going to be a really good way to do it. And this one is related to the Kubernetes PKI directory, which is where all the certificates are. And it's actually going to tell us this is all we need to do, is we need to do this. We need to do this change own root command. And if we run the check again, we'll see that everything passes. So those are just some different ways to kind of solve all of these challenges. If I go back to the scenarios, probably won't go into every single one of these. I think that one is important to know. I would say that certificate signing requests are very important for both the CKA and CKS. Audit logging, container hardening is a good one. Understanding how to use Docker, having some basic knowledge with Docker. They might ask you to make changes to the Docker daemon configuration or to podman configuration, something along those lines. So really being good on those. The image policy webhook, this is definitely something you should know. This will probably come up on your CKA as well as your CKS, being able to complete a image policy webhook setup. This is a really, really good one. I would really say lock this one in and make sure that you have a good handle on how to go through this process. So we can do this here. Actually, I will say that this scenario is very close to something that you're probably gonna get. So we have an image policy webhook that's been half finished. We want to complete it. We want to do these things as well. So knowing how to complete that is going to be really good. I'm not going to go into all of these right now. I might do another video on kind of a deep dive going into doing some of these scenarios and really understanding why things work the way they do. Vulnerability scanning with Trivy is a good one. They might ask you to scan some images and identify some vulnerabilities and then maybe update a deployment, something along those lines. Immutability, read-only file systems, understanding security best practices when it comes to containers, of having just a read-only root file system. How do you implement that? Creating ingress and securing ingress with TLS. This is very important to know. Again, this is going to come up on your CKA and your CKS. And this should not be really that scary. Doing secure ingress, you're going to look at the documentation. It's going to walk you through pretty much everything. Really, all you have to do is create a TLS secret in Kubernetes, and knowing how to create that secret, what flags to pass to it, and then how to consume that secret in your ingress or even in a deployment. Network policy. This is a huge one. This was a big one for me on the CKA that I just kind of did not want to take the time to mess with, and I just glossed over it. I wish that I had gone back and really locked this in before I took the CKA because I think it hurt me. But I will say that this is going to come up. Network policy is I can almost guarantee it's going to come up on all three of the exams, including the CKAD. You're not going to have to know how to necessarily create a network policy on the CKAD, but you will have to understand how to read one. So for the CKA, CKS, definitely lock these in. Be comfortable creating network policies, be comfortable reading network policies, be comfortable understanding how to troubleshoot network policies. Privilege escalation is going to be a good one. RBAC and service accounts. This is going to be another huge one that you really want to lock in. Again, this is going to come up on all three of the exams for sure. I can guarantee you. So I would really understand service account permissions, understand RBAC permissions, understand the difference between role bindings, cluster role bindings, roles and cluster roles. Um, etcd encryption. This is a fun one. I would highly suggest getting this locked in. This should be fairly straightforward to understand. Secret access in pods and reading and decoding secrets. Really working with secrets and in the context of pods, working with config maps and environment variables. Another thing that they're going to want to expect you to know how to do is work with service accounts. Again, this goes back to RBAC, but how do you not necessarily create service accounts, but how do you tie roles and cluster roles to service accounts? When do you use a role versus a cluster role? And a role binding versus a cluster role binding. And then again, how do you test this, right? So really understanding how to use the command k auth can I, and then passing it as a service account. That's going to be huge. Token mounting. This is one that was a little bit unfamiliar to me, but let me see if I can actually get this pulled up. They might be not crazy because I had another one of these scenarios on it running. I think this is actually going to be really important. I know this did come up for me on the CKS, something similar to this, where they want you to auto mount or they want you to disable auto mounting of service tokens. Um, and then they also want you to be able to be familiar with projected volumes. So doing a projected volume gives you the ability to control the token lifecycle among other things. So super important to understand that using gvisor and creating a runtime class and consuming a runtime class. I believe that was on the CKAD or on the CKA as well as the CKAD, but that's really good to know. And then static manual analysis of Docker files and YAML files. This was one that was a little bit surprising to me, but it was not, I did not find it super challenging. But you might in this example, we can actually open this one up really quick. I don't want to take up too much time in this video. It's not meant to be a super deep dive. I just want to give you kind of an overview of what you're in for. But in this one, they're asking you to, this is a really good training exercise, I think, because they're giving you a bunch of different files and they're asking you to understand, to look them over manually and to understand what's going on. So if we pull up app1 to1 Docker file, for example, and we look at this file, we can see that this is a pretty standard Docker file. I don't really see anything going on here. They are asking you to move the less secure app or to find the less secure one of these. That looks pretty decent to me. Let me look at this other one and see what we've got going on here. This looks pretty good too. I don't really see anything that sticks out to me. If I open up app 2, let's see what we have here. This looks all still pretty good. We have a user called app user that we're creating. So that's a good practice that we're not just using a built-in user and we're creating a less privileged user. This one, I don't see anything that sticks out. And let's look at app 3, 1C. Expose. run secret token and for, okay. So here, and this is very important, right? It says move the less secure file. So this gives us a clue that there is only one, which is why I didn't spend a ton of time on all of those. And if I look here, I can tell you that this is bad. Run echo secret into temp/token, run this command, and then delete temp/token. Why is this bad? To understand this, you have to understand how container images are built. They're built in layers. With this being your base layer, this is another 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 layer, this is a layer on top of it, and then this is your final layer at the end, right? So what does this mean? This means that when you actually build this image, this secret token is always going to be embedded in the manifest for that image, and you can actually when you look at a Docker, a container image manifest, you can actually see the SHA of all of the different layers, and you can actually extract that particular layer, and you'd be able to get the token from it. So that's why that's bad. I know that intuitively just because I've worked with these so much, but you're going to need to understand how to look at that and how to troubleshoot something like that. Oh, sorry, I need to move that. And so I'll go ahead and check it, and validation failed, actually. That's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. I completely looked at that wrong. They're asking to compare these right here. So they're asking us to compare app one. I'm sorry, I completely jumped over that. So between between these two, what's the least secure? So I'm gonna go ahead and cat both of these and just maybe see if I can pick out anything side to side. Or I would say, or wait, let me clear that. Okay. Um, okay, so if we look at these, we can see this first one is a multi-stage build. So from Ubuntu, we're installing our dependencies, and then we're doing a second stage where we're using Alpine container and we're copying our build over from that. The second one is just a single stage. So the second one would be the less secure of the two. And let me just verify that that is the one that I think it is. Yeah. So we're going to move that one to root and secure, and we'll check it. And yeah, so the reason why that one is quote unquote less secure is it's a um, in the first one where we look at, we are using a Alpine image, which is going to be smaller and it's going to have less dependencies. And then we're just taking our application code and copying it into that Alpine container. So there's less of an attack surface here, as opposed to in the second one, we're using a full-blown Ubuntu container that has all the dependencies and everything like that. So you're going to want to have to know things like that. Be comfortable with that. I'm not sure how much the weight is on those types of questions, but if you're really good with Docker, if you're really have a good understanding of those things, then that's going to help you a lot. So going to kind of wrap it up here. Verify platform binaries. That's a good one you should know how to do. Fairly straightforward, I believe. If I go back to these scenarios for the CKS, that's all. Those are the only ones we have, right? These are the only ones that we get from Killer Coda. They don't have any other. They don't have a bunch of them like they do for the CKA and other ones. But what I would recommend is I would really recommend going into the CKA and really taking all of these, going through all of these scenarios that relate to the API server, the kubelet being misconfigured, really understand those. I would make sure I go through all the ingress ones, the network policy ones, anything to do with RBACs or service accounts, and cluster upgrades. I would definitely do all of those things. So I would really spend time and get those locked in. And I think, let's see if there's any here. PKI Essentials is probably a good one. I wouldn't be as concerned with the gateway on this one. Understanding Linux system services, kubelet status, these are good. Um, Viewing certificates, creating users, create service accounts, upgrading, anything about that. And I'll leave kind of a list in the description of some of the ones that I really think you should focus on. But just to give a recap, I think the biggest ones in my mind are related to ingress, kubelet configuration, um, network policy, RBAC, service accounts, and Docker hardening. I will say there was one question that tripped me up on the CKS that I knew how to do it. I knew what they were asking me to do, but for some reason I was having trouble with the exact command that I was running. I don't want to give that away, obviously, but I did feel when I got into the exam that it was going to be a lot more manageable uh, than I was worried that it was going to be like really unwieldy and like these crazy security questions. I did skip over one thing actually. Let me take a step back because this one is very important as well for the CKS. I don't remember where this was. I looked over it. Understanding Falco. So Falco is a tool, basically an intrusion detection tool that you're going to want to have to know how to write Falco rules. The logic is fairly simple, but you're going to want to have to understand how to write these. So I know that there are some of these questions on the simulator as well. I would absolutely be familiar with Falco. Look over the examples and the documentation. You don't have to be an expert by any means, but you should know how to modify one of the basic examples. And you need to basically what they might be asking you to use Falco for is, finding a service or something that's running, um, or finding a container that's running a service that it shouldn't be running. So those are all things to look out for. Thanks for tuning in for this one. I'll be making a couple more videos, wrapping it up with the KCNA and the KCSA as well. And then I'll probably come back and do a deeper dive into some of these scenarios and just some more kind of exam tips and tricks. So I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I will be talking to you soon.